Hi, this is Chris Legaspi, and in this video, I'm going to go over the figure drawing process of a recent figure sketch that I did. And this video will be a slideshow style video. It's not a full video demo recording. So I'm just going to go over a few of the process images and then talk about my thought process as I went through the drawing. So let's begin with the first step here. This is what would be called an envelope. These first few images are the beginning of the drawing, also known as the lay-in stage, basically starting the drawing from going from basic shapes to construction and things like that, and I'll talk about what that means. So here we have what's called the envelope, and this is basically a 2D graphic shape that kind of captures the figure, all the outer points of the figure. I used, as far as the contact points, the anchor points, the points that I used, was that what I was looking at was the hand, where the hand is resting on the ground there, the point of the toe, this would be his left toe, the model's left toe, and that sort of the curve of the back. So those 3 points kind of gave me this triangle, and I used a more of a curvy sort of gestural shape. And let's talk about a gesture for a moment. Now this is a 2D graphic style of drawing, shape-based style of drawing. It comes from the illustrative tradition that I've learned. And here, this image is the stroke order. What this is shows sort of the order of the marks that I made, starting from the first all the way to the fourth about. Now, the first mark is the most important mark, and that's the action. And what that is, what I'm looking at is the action of his torso. Typically, when I look for the action of the pose, I'm looking at the torso. It's the biggest mass of the body. And looking specifically at the outer edge. So that's what that first stroke is. That's stroke number 1. That's the action. My mentor, Steve Huston, calls it the thrust. Animators call it the action line. But typically, the main gesture, the driving gesture of the pose. And then stroke 2, 3, and 4 sort of construct the 2D graphic shape, which I'm going to build the rest of the figure around. It's pretty much I'm going to... my thinking here is that I want to know how much space this takes up, how much two-dimensional space this takes up in my picture. This was drawn in a little sketchbook, so that's really important to show like a placement and how much 2D space your figure or your subject will take up in your picture. So that's my thinking there for the envelope and the stroke order. Next, we have the what I call the beginning of the construction phase. So this is how I go from 2D style drawing to 3D style drawing, or shape-based drawing to construction. Those are 2 other ways to think about it. So basically, I'm turning my that flat graphic triangle into more specific shapes, like an arm or 2 arms here, 2 legs, some feet. And basically, thinking graphic shapes, thinking in big shapes, simplifying the complexity of the figure. Simplifying the anatomy into a box. The torso into a box. The arms and legs into cylinders, and starting to indicate not only the shapes themselves, but points of insertion. That's what some of these marks and circles you see. I want to know where the arms insert into the torso, because for me, the torso is the most important part of the figure study. So I want to get that right first, and then the limbs kind of come in and out of the torso. So this is the beginning of the 3D style of drawing, beginning of construction. And the next image here, I guess this is step 3, would be refining. Just refining the construction, going from a simple tube to a tube with a sphere, an oval, or a football shape, sort of adding the mass of the muscle, the bicep, or the tricep in this case, drawing big spheres for the deltoid, the shoulder muscle, and so on, and adding some of the secondary anatomy. The previous step, I added the major anatomy, the big mass of the upper back, the mass of the middle back, the abdomen, the mass of the hips, the mass of the thighs. So now I'm refining, adding the smaller masses in the shoulder joint, smaller masses in the upper arm, forearm, etc. So this is the refinement of the previous step, and that's pretty much how I work. I start simple, and then refine into complexity. So this is refining the 3D stage. And this completes the lay-in, actually. Okay, these next set of drawings is what I call the shading stage, or beginning to add light and shadow, beginning of the rendering. Everybody loves rendering in a drawing. This is how it starts for me. So the first thing I do, and also too, the order of the shading process can vary, as you'll see, but typically what I do, especially in a situation like this, when we look at the reference that has a beautiful light and shadow pattern, and shout out to New Masters Academy for their wonderful reference always. And you see a nice strong light and shadow pattern, singular spotlight type setup, academic type lighting, and it produces a clear shadow. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm basically drawing the shadow shape that I see, kind of grouping. Of course, first, that's a value discussion. It's a whole other discussion. Grouping the shadow I see into one big shape, one big mass, and then at the border, I'm treating it with a little bit of a different edge. So you see a little bit of a softer edge. This is more of a firm edge versus like the harder outline, sharper edges on the outline or the contour. And that's the second part I did of this stage too, is adding the subtle halftone or transition tone that goes from the contour into the form itself, like at the armpit area, adding those subtle tones there. But basically, it's just softening some of the hard edges so that I can begin to turn a flat graphic thing into the illusion of rounded form, light and shadow. That's what light and shadow does. And that's what this step is, the beginning of, is the edge treatment. So step 4, separate light and shadow, draw the shadow shape. Step 5, now I'm going to mass in the shape. Basically, just fill it with a tone. Fill it with a tone so that I can see clearly, oh, this side is shadow, this side is light. And then there's the edge, the border, the core shadow. And that's where I have to do most of my work to resolve this sketch. So that's what step 5 is, just massing in the tone. The value on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever, value scales can vary, but the paper is at like a 3, so this tone would be maybe a 4 or a 5. But don't take those numbers too hard. They don't really mean anything. I'm just basically giving it a medium tone, a tone that's darker than the paper, so a clear separation. Okay, next, step 6. Continuing with the shading is the half tone. So what I want to do is now treat the light side, or the side that's not shadow, add some complexity into that, refine the smaller forms. And that's what half tone does. So basically, I'm adding a tone into the light side now so that it helps transition value-wise from light to shadow. And I'm also using a different technique. You can see I'm going, if you look closely, if we zoom in here, you can see the technique is kind of going across the form. And, I'll talk about that in detail in later videos and courses, talking about specific shading techniques. But this is one of them, going across the form, meaning that, if you're going, if you imagine the torso as a big cylinder, you want to go left to right in this case, instead of up and down, left to right, so that you wrap around. Imagine the torso as a big cylinder. You wrap around it. So you're going across the form. Basically leads the eye. So it does 3 things. 1, it creates value transition. 2, creates edge transition, softening the edge, making it feel more like rounded human flesh, more like form and not a 2D graphic design thing, a graphic shape. And 3, it leads the eye. So that's why that's why I use that technique of going across the form. But, there's many, many, many ways to accomplish this. This is just what I chose in the moment. It seemed like a good idea at the time. So that was my thinking behind this stage and the technique behind the marks. And this diagram here shows the what I mentioned earlier about value simplification. This is a whole other discussion. But basically, my philosophy in most cases is 2 or 3 values, or the value ranges really. Something dark, something middle, something light. That's typically what I use. Many of the greats in history have used this to great success. Rembrandt, Caravaggio, 2 of my favorites come to mind. This simple shadow, light, and midtone sort of thinking creates a nice, beautiful graphic design, and also gives you some room to help model the form. Okay, and finally, to complete the sketch, this is step 7. Is what I call the resolution. And resolution means that it's not finished. It's not a finished drawing by any mean, but it's as far as I wanted to take it at this during this practice session. This is one of my morning drawings. I have a morning drawing routine. I wake up and draw first thing in the morning. And, this was about 30 minutes in. And, this is as far as I wanted to take it. I don't want to spend 30 hours. I just want to do a 30-minute study of figure and of lighting and shadow and so on. So this is as far as I wanted to resolve this drawing at this stage. So here's some of the things I did to resolve it. Number one, I increased the contrast. So what I do is I darken the shadow value. I make the value of the shadow darker. As you can see, I made it darker in some areas, adding subtle gradients in there to make it seem more, quote, real. Subtle gradients like the shadow in the arm. And of course, in the legs there, you can see it gets a little bit darker in between the two legs there. Next, soften more edges. So part of rendering, probably the biggest part of rendering, is refining values and refining edges. Here, I'm basically like softening the edge around his glute, or that hip muscle there. I believe this is gluteus medial muscle, just basically softening it, making it feel round, making it more real. Human form doesn't have hard edges. It has very soft edges. So even though stylistically these are more firm hard edges, they're not true natural type edges. These are more stylized edges. I wanted to make it as soft as possible in the stage. And part of that is my aesthetic. This is what I think looks cool. That's basically what aesthetic means. And it kind of gets the message across, the story or the narrative I wanted to get across. The edges that I use are becoming more conscious in terms of narrative and meaning. But anyway, regardless of that, soften the edge. That's what I did here. And the third thing is I added occlusion, shadow accents, and contour accents. Basically, dark accents and accents of edge. So starting with the dark accent, I put them in what's called the occlusion shadow area. Basically, these are cracks and crevices. These are places where light doesn't get in, so they get very, very dark. And when you put a dark accent in an occlusion shadow area, it creates incredible depth, because it makes the eye think like there's a deep, deep, dark crack that makes the eye think it can go into this darkness. So that's the beautiful part of occlusion shadow, and that's one of the tools we can use as artists. So some of the occlusion shadow areas are the armpit there, and the between the buttocks and then the other armpits. You notice like they're a little bit darker there, and that was a total conscious choice. So you can do that at home, occlusion shadow area. And the last thing I did was add some contour accents. Basically made a couple edges harder than they should be. Now, these don't really exist. These are unnatural. These are stylized. But I put them there because A, they look cool. B, they draw your eye. And C, they create contrast. And that's what resolution really is about. When I want to do a quick resolution, my goal is to create as much contrast as possible in key areas. Now, I don't do it everywhere. If you create contrast everywhere, then you have to do the entire chore of rendering from A to B. But these strategic accents help you move the eye. So, for example, around his glute there, around his lat, where his hand touches the ground, put a little hard edge accent there. The pinching part of his abdomen, and of course the cast shadow around the glute creates these beautiful accents of edge. So they draw your eye there. There's accents of value to create the depth, create a full value range, and these edge accents attract your eye, so they help move you around the image. So that's pretty much the completion of the sketch. It was about 30 minutes total time. And that's the end of this short little video. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little slideshow format. Let me know in the comments if you like this type of thing. I got a lot of requests to do a slideshow video, talk about my thought process. I thought it might be something fun to do. And if you got a lot of value out of this, if you learned something, let me know. And let me know if you want to see more of this. And if you like this drawing and if you like my work, you definitely want to sign up for my newsletter. Newsletter subscribers will get access to a lot of exclusive content I don't release, only to subscribers, and I release all the good stuff early. For example, in this month's newsletter, you can get a high-res handout of this entire process and a nice, beautiful text breakdown, a really detailed text breakdown. So if you learn more in text format, you'll definitely want to get your hands on the newsletter. Just all you have to do is sign up for it. once you enter your email, you'll get access to the subscriber page, and boom, you get access to all the content. There's videos, detailed articles like this, high-res handouts, and a whole lot more. Reference everything you need, to kind of help you draw better, and you kind of get more information on sort of my drawing philosophy, the West Coast California style drawing I do, this 2D to 3D thing, and I'll talk much more in other videos. So I want to thank you for watching. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter, and I hope to see you in the next video. So until next time, get out there, keep drawing, and build up that mileage. Bye for now.